On December 14th, 1983, Robert Morin made his final log entry at Pier 11 Light Station, 22 miles off the coast of Maine. Population 1. At 04:17, the automated beacon continued its rotation, but the radio went silent. No distress call, no explanation. Coast Guard found his skiff 3 days later, drifting 6 miles southeast. Engine cold, fuel tank half full, no sign of Morin. They ruled it accidental drowning, case closed in 11 days. But they didn't explain why his logbook was missing pages, or why the radio equipment had been dismantled and reassembled, or why a man who'd spent 31 years on the water would leave his boat in calm seas with the running lights still on. Something happened at Pier 11. Something the Coast Guard decided wasn't worth understanding. Eugene Talbot had been retired from Coast Guard investigations for 3 years when the letter arrived. No return address. Postmarked Rockland, Maine. Inside, a single page torn from a logbook. Morin's handwriting. Dated December 9th, 1983.
Vessel passed again tonight. No running lights. 3rd time this week. Reported to Station Rockland. They said they'd look into it.
Talbot had known Morin. Not well. They'd crossed paths twice during inspections in 76 and 79. Morin was the kind of keeper who noticed things, documented everything, didn't make accusations he couldn't prove. The page had been torn carefully, deliberately preserved. Someone wanted Talbot to know that Robert Morin had seen something, and someone else wanted to make sure that knowledge died with him. Station Rockland sat at the end of a concrete pier that had seen better decades. Talbot found the duty officer in a prefab building that smelled like diesel and old coffee. Lieutenant Gary Foss was 42, thick around the middle, and clearly uninterested in visitors asking about closed cases.
Lieutenant Foss?
Eugene Talbot. I was hoping to ask about the Morin case.
Morin, the lighthouse keeper.
That's right.
Drowned. Happens out here.
His log mentioned reporting something to this station. Vessels without running lights.
Foss's expression didn't change, but his hand stopped moving across the clipboard he'd been pretending to review.
I wouldn't know anything about that. I transferred here in February.
Who was duty officer in December?
That'd be Chief Warrant Officer Brennan. Retired last spring. Health reasons.
Foss turned back to his clipboard. Conversation over. Brennan's address was in the personnel files Talbot still had access to. Professional courtesy among investigators. The house was a salt box in Thomaston, paint peeling, truck in the driveway that hadn't moved in months. Brennan answered on the 4th knock. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 months.
Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying.
I'm not selling anything.
Eugene Talbot. Coast Guard investigations retired. I wanted to ask about Robert Morin.
Brennan's hand tightened on the doorframe.
Don't know the name.
He was the keeper at Pier 11.
He called your station about unlighted vessels. Multiple times, according to his log.
Lots of keepers call about lots of things. I don't remember every one.
He died 5 days after his last report.
Then I guess he should have been more careful on the water.
The door closed, but not before Talbot saw what Brennan was holding in his other hand. A glass. And his hand was shaking. The Rockland Public Library kept copies of the local paper going back to 1912. Talbot spent 3 hours with the microfilm machine, scrolling through November and December of '83. Morin's death made page 6, 4 paragraphs. Lighthouse keeper presumed drowned. No mention of his reports. No mention of an investigation. But something else caught Talbot's attention. November 28th, a brief item about a fishing boat, the Mary Kathleen, running aground near Owl's Head in fog. The boat was registered to a company called Down East Maritime Services. Talbot wrote down the name. 2 weeks later, another item. December 12th. The harbor master at Tennant's Harbor reporting an abandoned skiff. No registration numbers. Engine removed. Talbot pulled out his map of the coast. Owl's Head, Tennant's Harbor, Pier 11. 3 points, roughly equidistant, all within sight of Morin's Lighthouse. Down East Maritime Services operated out of a corrugated metal building near the Rockland waterfront. The sign was sun-faded. The parking lot was empty except for a Lincoln Continental that cost more than the building. The woman at the front desk had the look of someone who'd been told exactly what to say and when to say it.
I'm looking for information about the Mary Kathleen. Ran aground last November.
I'm sorry, who are you?
Eugene Talbot. I'm looking into an incident that may be connected.
Connected to what?
A death.
Her expression flickered, just for a moment.
Mr. Corrigan handles all vessel matters. He's not available.
When will he be available?
I couldn't say. He travels.
Talbot left his card. She didn't pick it up. Talbot found the harbor master at Tennant's Harbor, working on his own boat, a 20-foot lobster boat that had seen 3 decades of hard use. Dwayne Pratt was 64, skin like old leather, and he didn't stop working when Talbot approached.
Mr. Pratt? I'm looking into a boat that was found abandoned here last December. No registration.
I remember it. Reported it myself.
What happened to it?
Coast Guard towed it. That's the last I saw.
Did you notice anything unusual about it?
Pratt's hands kept moving, but slower now.
Unusual how?
Anything at all?
It was just a skiff. 14-footer, nothing special.
The paper said the engine was removed.
Did it?
Pratt didn't elaborate. His face said the conversation was over. But his eyes kept flicking toward the water. That night, Talbot spread everything on the motel room desk. The torn log page, his notes, the newspaper clippings. Morin had seen vessels running without lights. He'd reported them. Within 2 weeks, he was dead. A boat ran aground at Owl's Head. Another was found abandoned at Tennant's Harbor, both near Pier 11, both connected to the same time frame. Down East Maritime Services owned at least one of those boats. Their office had a Lincoln Continental and a secretary trained to say nothing. And Brennan, the man who should have received Morin's reports, had retired 6 months early and was drinking himself into oblivion.
Someone's moving something along this coast. Morin saw it. Morin reported it. And someone made sure he couldn't report it again.
But who sent the log page? And why send it to him? The next morning, Talbot drove to Pier 11's shore station. The lighthouse itself was inaccessible without a boat, but the support facility sat on a rocky point 2 miles south of Rockland. The building was locked, Coast Guard property. But Talbot still had his ID, and the young seaman apprentice guarding the gate wasn't about to question a former investigator. Inside, the equipment room was exactly as Morin would have left it. Radio sets, spare bulbs for the beacon, tools arranged with military precision. But the logbook shelf was empty.
Where are the station logs?
Transferred to district archives, sir. Standard procedure after an incident.
All of them?
Yes, sir. Commander Perry signed the transfer order himself.
Commander Perry. Talbot wrote the name down. That was 2 levels above what a routine archive transfer should require. The district archives were in Portland, 3 hours south. Talbot called ahead, using his old credentials and the tone of voice that implied he was still authorized to ask questions. The archivist was helpful. Too helpful.
Pier 11 station logs? Let me check. Yes, we received them in January. But I'm showing they were transferred again in March.
Transferred where?
Regional headquarters, Boston.
On whose authority?
Commander Perry requested the transfer. Said they were needed for a review.
What kind of review?
It doesn't say. But there's a note here, return not required.
Return not required. The logs had been moved twice in 4 months, each time further from anyone who might want to read them. And now they disappeared into a regional headquarters, where a former investigator had no authority to follow. Someone was cleaning house, and they'd started before Morin's body was cold. Commander William Perry had an office in the Federal Building in Portland. Talbot didn't have an appointment. He showed up anyway. The commander's aide tried to turn him away. Talbot waited in the lobby for 4 hours until Perry had to walk past him to leave for the day.
Mr. Talbot, I was told you were asking about old files.
The Pier 11 logs.
You ordered them transferred twice.
Administrative matters. Nothing that concerns a retired investigator.
Robert Morin's death concerns me.
Perry stopped walking. He was 58, silver hair, the kind of posture that came from 30 years of uniforms.
Morin drowned. Tragic, but not unusual for lighthouse keepers.
Then why move his logs to Boston?
I don't recall the specifics.
You signed the transfer orders personally.
I sign a lot of orders, Mr. Talbot. Good evening.
Perry walked past him and out the door. But Talbot had seen something. When he mentioned the logs, Perry's jaw had tightened. The commander knew exactly what was in them. Back in Rockland, Talbot tried a different approach. If the logs were gone, maybe someone had read them before they disappeared. The seaman apprentice at the shore station was named Kevin Doyle, 22 years old, still believed in the service.
You were assigned here after Morin died?
Yes, sir. January.
Did you ever see his logbooks?
They were here when I arrived. I wasn't supposed to read them, but, well, I was curious about what happened to him.
What did you find?
Doyle glanced toward the door, making sure they were alone.
He was meticulous, sir. Recorded everything. Weather, vessel traffic, maintenance. But the last 2 weeks, there were entries about ships at night, running dark. He reported every one.
Did anyone respond?
Not that I could see. He just kept reporting. Then the entries stopped.
Doyle's voice dropped.
There was one more thing. December 13th. His last entry. He wrote that he was going out to get a closer look.
Morin had left the lighthouse to investigate the dark vessels himself. And the next morning, he was gone. Talbot drove back to Thomaston, Brennan's house. This time he didn't knock. He waited in his car across the street until the lights went on inside. At 9:14, Brennan came out to check his mailbox. Talbot was already walking toward him.
I told you I don't know anything.
Morin reported dark vessels to your station at least 6 times in 2 weeks. You were duty officer. You received those reports.
I received a lot of reports.
And you did nothing.
2 weeks later, he's dead.
He drowned. It happens.
He went out that night to investigate.
Because no one else would. Because you wouldn't.
Brennan's face changed. The defensive anger cracked just for a moment, and underneath was something else. Fear.
You don't know what you're digging into.
Then tell me.
I can't.
He went back inside, but this time, Talbot heard the deadbolt turn, and then another lock, and another. The next morning, Talbot went back to Down East Maritime Services. The Lincoln was gone. So was the secretary. The building was locked, but the door had a window, and through it Talbot could see empty desks, filing cabinets standing open, nothing left inside. He walked around back. A loading dock faced the water, fresh tire tracks in the gravel. Someone had cleared out in a hurry. A fisherman was mending nets on the adjacent pier. Talbot approached.
The company next door.
When did they leave?
Last night, 3 trucks, worked till midnight.
You see where they went?
Headed north, that's all I know.
What did they do here?
Down East Maritime?
Said they were in the charter business, but I never saw them charter anything.
The fisherman went back to his nets. He didn't seem inclined to say more. But he'd said enough. Down East Maritime had operated for at least a year without doing any visible business, and the day after Talbot started asking questions, they vanished. Talbot spent the afternoon at the Knox County Registry of Deeds. Down East Maritime Services had been incorporated in 1981. Listed owner, Patrick Corrigan. Address, a P.O. Box in Camden. The company owned 3 vessels. The Mary Kathleen was one. The other 2 were listed as the Nancy Drew and the Penobscot Star. Registration records showed the Nancy Drew had been sold in October '83. Buyer, another company called Atlantic Freight Solutions. Same P.O. box. The Penobscot Star had no disposition listed. Just a note. Registration pending renewal. Talbot cross-referenced the address. The P.O. box was registered to yet another company, Coastal Properties LLC. Same pattern. Shell within shell within shell. But every shell had the same signature on the incorporation papers. Patrick Corrigan. And Patrick Corrigan's home address, buried in a 1981 filing, was listed as 14 Bayview Road, Camden. 14 Bayview Road was a Victorian house on a hill overlooking Penobscot Bay. 3 stories, fresh paint, a view that cost money. Talbot parked at the end of the driveway. A woman was working in the garden. Mid-50s, expensive clothes for yard work.
Mrs. Corrigan? Mrs. Corrigan, can I help you? I'm looking for Patrick Corrigan. About a business matter. Mrs. Corrigan, Patrick's not here. When do you expect him?
She stood up slowly, brushing dirt from her gloves, taking her time. Mrs. Corrigan, I don't. Patrick and I separated in March. He's living somewhere in Boston now.
Do you have a forwarding address?
Mrs. Corrigan, if I did, I wouldn't give it to a stranger.
It's about a man who died.
Robert Morin.
Her hands stopped moving. Mrs. Corrigan, I don't know that name.
He was a lighthouse keeper.
Your husband's company operated boats near his station. Mrs. Corrigan, Patrick had a lot of companies. I stopped keeping track.
She turned back to her garden, but Talbot noticed she'd pulled the same weed twice. That evening, Talbot called an old contact at the DEA field office in Boston, Frank Hurley. They'd worked together on a smuggling case in '79.
Eugene Talbot. Thought you retired.
I did. I'm looking into something on my own time. Down East Maritime Services. Patrick Corrigan.
There was a pause. Longer than there should have been.
Where'd you hear those names?
Knox County business filings. Why?
I can't discuss ongoing investigations.
So there is an investigation.
I didn't say that.
A lighthouse keeper died last
December. Robert Morin. He was reporting dark vessels in the area where Corrigan's boats operated.
Another pause.
Eugene, I'm going to give you some advice. As a friend. Stop asking questions about Patrick Corrigan.
Why?
Because the people he works with don't like questions. And they have a way of making sure questions stop getting asked.
The line went dead. The next morning, Talbot found his car had been broken into. Nothing taken. Glove compartment open. Papers scattered across the seat. A message. He drove to the Rockland police station, asked to see the detective who'd handled the initial response to Morin's disappearance. Detective Arthur Phelps was 56, built like a man who'd played football 40 years ago and never quite stopped eating like it.
Morin case. Coast Guard handled that. We just assisted with the shore search.
Did you find anything?
Found his truck at the shore station. Keys in it. That's about all.
No signs of struggle? Nothing unusual?
He was a lighthouse keeper who went out in a boat and didn't come back. Happens more often than you'd think.
Did you interview anyone?
Neighbors? Other keepers? Anyone who might have seen something?
Phelps shifted in his chair.
Coast Guard said they had it covered. We stood down.
On whose orders?
Chief's orders. Said there was no indication of foul play.
Phelps wasn't lying, but he wasn't comfortable with the truth either. Talbot spent the afternoon tracking down the other lighthouse keepers who worked the coast that winter. Most were seasonal, gone now. But one name kept coming up. Harold Vickers, keeper at Whitehead Light, 12 miles south of Pier 11. Vickers was 71 and living in a nursing home in Belfast. Emphysema. He'd been forced to retire in '84. Talbot found him in a wheelchair by a window, watching the parking lot.
Mr. Vickers?
I'm Eugene Talbot. I was hoping to ask about Robert Morin.
Bobby. Yeah, I knew him. Did you talk to him before he disappeared? Radio. Every few days. That's how keepers stay sane out there.
Did he mention anything unusual? Dark vessels?
Vickers coughed. A long, wet sound.
Bobby saw things. He was always seeing things.
What kind of things?
Boats, running dark, coming in from the northeast.
Did you see them too?
Vickers turned to look at him. His eyes were sharp despite the rest.
I saw enough to know not to talk about it.
Talbot pressed harder.
Mr. Vickers, a man is dead. If you know something...
I know Bobby's dead. I know he reported what he saw and nothing happened. I know he went out one night to get proof and never came back.
How do you know he went out for proof?
Because he told me. Night before. Said he was tired of being ignored. Said he was going to get close enough to read a hull number.
Did he?
I don't know. I tried to raise him on the radio the next morning. No answer.
Did you report that?
Vickers laughed. It turned into another cough.
To who? The Coast Guard? They're the ones who told us to stop reporting.
Who told you that?
Some officer came out. December. Told us the dark vessel reports were causing problems. Said to focus on our primary duties.
Do you remember his name?
Perry. Commander Perry.
Commander Perry had personally visited lighthouse keepers to tell them to stop reporting suspicious vessels. The same Commander Perry who'd moved Morin's logs to Boston. Talbot drove back to Portland. This time, he didn't go to the Federal Building. He went to the bar across the street where Coast Guard personnel drank after work. He found a petty officer named Carol Dunham who'd worked in Perry's office for 3 years. She was on her second beer and not happy about working late.
I'm looking into the Pier 11 incident. Robert Morin.
The lighthouse keeper? That was before my time.
But you work for Commander
Perry.
I file his paperwork. That's not the same thing.
Did you ever file anything related to Morin?
Dunham took a long drink.
I file a lot of things.
Transfer orders.
To Boston.
I told you I just file what I'm told to file.
And you never wondered why a
Commander was personally handling a dead lighthouse keeper's paperwork.
Dunham set down her glass.
In this job, you learn not to wonder.
Talbot was running out of official channels. Everyone who knew something was either scared, bought, or both. He went back to the beginning. The letter. The torn log page. Someone had sent it to him. Someone who wanted the truth to come out but couldn't say it directly. The postmark was Rockland. The handwriting on the envelope was different from Morin's. Feminine. Careful. Talbot thought about who would have access to Morin's logs before they were transferred. Who might have torn out a page and kept it? Who might know his name from the old investigations? He pulled out the personnel files he'd copied years ago, cross-referenced with anyone connected to Station Rockland. One name stood out. Janet Morin, Robert's sister. She'd worked as a civilian clerk at the station from 78 to 82. Address, 47 Limrock Street, Rockland. Janet Morin lived in a small cape on a quiet street. She answered the door with the look of someone who'd been expecting this visit for a long time.
Mr. Talbot, I wondered when you'd figure it out.
You sent me the log page.
I sent it to a lot of people. You're the first one who actually showed up.
How did you get it?
Bobby sent it to me. Week before he died. Told me to keep it safe.
He knew something was wrong.
Bobby always knew. That was his problem. He couldn't let things go.
She led him into a small living room. Photos on every surface. Robert Morin in his Coast Guard uniform. Robert Morin at the lighthouse. Robert Morin as a young man, before 30 years of solitude had weathered his face.
Sit down, Mr. Talbot. I'll tell you what I know, which isn't much. But it's more than they want anyone to know.
Janet Morin had worked at Station Rockland for 4 years. She'd seen how reports were handled and not handled.
The dark vessel reports started in fall of '83. Bobby wasn't the only one making them, but his were the most detailed. He'd track times, bearings, estimated speeds.
What happened to those reports?
At first, nothing. They went into the log, got filed, disappeared. Then, in November, Brennan started telling keepers to stop.
On whose orders?
He never said. But I saw Perry's name on a memo. Something about coordinating with federal authorities.
Which federal authorities?
It didn't say. But the memo said to suspend investigation pending review.
They were told to stop looking.
And Bobby kept looking anyway. That's who he was.
Janet's voice broke.
I told him to stop. Told him it wasn't worth it. But he said if the Coast Guard wouldn't protect the coast, someone had to.
Talbot asked the question he'd been building toward.
Do you have the memo? The one with Perry's name?
No, I left the station before Bobby died. But I remember what it said.
What exactly?
Suspend investigation of unlighted vessel reports in Sector 7, pending coordination with Operation Coastal Watch.
Operation Coastal Watch.
I don't know what it was. I'd never heard of it before or since.
Talbot wrote it down. A code name. Something official enough to have a name. Something secret enough that a civilian clerk had never encountered it in 4 years.
Mrs. Morin, you said you sent the log page to multiple people. Who else?
The Rockland paper. The Portland Press Herald. A congressman's office. None of them responded.
Maybe they couldn't.
Or maybe they didn't want to.
She wasn't wrong. Someone had made sure this story stayed buried. And that someone had reach. Operation Coastal Watch. Talbot had never heard of it either, but he knew someone who might have. He drove to Augusta, the state archives. Federal operations that involved state cooperation sometimes left traces in interagency correspondence. 3 hours of searching turned up nothing, but the archivist mentioned something.
If it's a federal operation with that kind of name, it might be in the governor's security briefings. But those are classified for 15 years.
83 was 11 years ago.
Sorry, you'd need a court order or a Freedom of Information request. Either way, you're looking at months.
Talbot didn't have months. The trail was already going cold. Down East Maritime was gone. Corrigan was in the wind, and someone was watching him closely enough to break into his car. But there was one more angle. Hurley at DEA had warned him off Corrigan. That meant Corrigan was on someone's radar. Maybe the same operation that had told the Coast Guard to stop looking. The question was whether that operation was investigating Corrigan or protecting him. That night, Talbot got a call at his motel. The front desk said a man was waiting in the lobby. The man was Brennan. He looked worse than before. Unshaven, hands still shaking.
We need to talk. Not here.
They drove to a diner outside town, empty except for a waitress who didn't look twice at them.
I've been drinking myself to death for 11 months. Figured I might as well tell someone the truth before I finish the job.
I'm listening.
Morin's reports came through my station. Every one of them. I logged them, sent them up the chain. Standard procedure.
And
Commander Perry called me personally. Told me to stop logging them. Said it was a matter of national security.
Did he explain?
He said the vessels were part of an authorized operation. Told me anyone who interfered would be charged with obstruction.
Authorized by whom?
Brennan stared at his coffee.
He didn't say. But he made it clear that my career depended on keeping quiet.
Talbot pushed further.
what happened when Morin disappeared?
Perry handled everything. Personally. He ordered the search, then called it off after 3 days. Said there was no point continuing.
And you just went along with it?
I had a family. A pension. 22 years in.
So you let a man die?
Brennan's jaw tightened.
I didn't let anyone die. I followed orders. That's what we do.
Did you ever see the vessels yourself?
Once. I was doing a night patrol. Saw a trawler running dark about 3 miles off Final Haven. No lights, no transponder. Moving fast for a fishing boat.
Did you report it?
I started to. Then I remembered what Perry said.
So, you let it go.
I let it go. And 3 weeks later, Morin was dead.
Brennan finished his coffee. His hands had stopped shaking. Confession has that effect sometimes. Before Brennan left, Talbot asked one more question.
Operation Coastal Watch. Does that mean anything to you?
Brennan stopped at the door.
Where'd you hear that?
A memo. Perry's name was on it.
I never saw the memo, but I heard the name once. Perry was on the phone, didn't know I was in the hallway. He said something about Coastal Watch needing another 6 months.
6 months for what?
I don't know, but he sounded scared. Perry doesn't scare easy.
Brennan walked out into the parking lot. Talbot watched him drive away. An authorized operation. National security. Dark vessels running something along the Maine coast. A commander protecting them. A lighthouse keeper who saw too much. The pieces were forming a picture, and it was uglier than Talbot had imagined. The next morning, Talbot drove to Pier 11's shore station. He needed to see the place where Morin had spent his last day on solid ground. Seaman Doyle wasn't there. A different guard. Older. Less cooperative.
This is a restricted facility. I can't let you in without authorization.
I have authorization.
He showed his old credentials. The guard looked at them for a long time.
These expired in 81.
Call Commander Perry. Tell him Eugene Talbot wants to see where Robert Morin worked.
The guard went inside to make the call. Talbot waited. 5 minutes. 10. When the guard came back, his expression had changed.
Commander Perry says you're to leave the premises immediately. And if you're seen on Coast Guard property again, you'll be arrested for trespassing.
So Perry knew his name, knew he was asking questions, and wanted him gone. That was almost as good as a confession. Talbot sat in his car outside the shore station, thinking. He had reports of dark vessels, a company that vanished overnight, a commander covering up an investigation, a dead lighthouse keeper who'd seen too much. But he still didn't know what the vessels were carrying, or who was ultimately behind the operation. His contact at DEA had warned him off Corrigan. That suggested drugs. The Maine coast had been a smuggling route for decades. Marijuana from Colombia, cocaine from the Caribbean. Easy to land in isolated coves, transfer to trucks, move inland. But this was different. This had federal protection. Operation Coastal Watch wasn't investigating smuggling. It was enabling it. The question was why? What would make the government protect drug runners? Unless the drugs were paying for something else. Something the government wanted but couldn't fund through official channels. Nicaragua, El Salvador. The wars no one was supposed to know about. Talbot had read the papers. He knew what the CIA was rumored to be doing in Central America, and he knew they needed money to do it. Talbot drove to Boston. If Corrigan was there, someone knew where. And if Corrigan was connected to intelligence operations, there was one place that might have answers. The federal courthouse. Public records, court filings. He spent 6 hours in the clerk's office, searching for any case involving Down East Maritime, Atlantic Freight Solutions, Coastal Properties, or Patrick Corrigan. Nothing. The companies didn't exist in the court system, but he found something else. A sealed indictment from February 1984. United States versus John Doe's 1-7. The charging document was redacted, but the docket number matched a drug trafficking case. The case had been dismissed. Reason? Classified. Talbot made a note of the judge's name. Honorable William Keating, Eastern District of Massachusetts. Keating was still on the bench, and judges sometimes talked to former law enforcement, especially when the questions involved national security. Judge Keating agreed to meet Talbot in his chambers. The conversation was off the record.
The John Doe case. I remember it. 7 defendants. Major trafficking operation along the New England coast.
What happened?
Justice Department dropped it. Said the defendants were cooperating with an ongoing national security operation.
Did they say which operation?
No, and I didn't ask. When justice invokes national security, judges learn not to push.
Do you remember any of the defendants' real names?
Keating hesitated. He was walking a line.
I can't give you names, but I can tell you that one of the defendants was described as a maritime business owner from the mid-coast region. And the dismissal was personally approved by someone very high up in the Justice Department.
How high?
High enough that I never saw a signature, just a directive.
Corrigan. It had to be Corrigan. Protected from prosecution because his smuggling operation was funding something the government wanted kept quiet. Talbot drove back to Maine that night. The picture was clear now, but he still needed proof. Something that connected Corrigan to the operation. Something that showed Perry was complicit. He thought about Brennan. The man was falling apart. Guilt eating him alive. Maybe he knew more than he'd said. Talbot went back to Thomaston. It was past midnight. Brennan's lights were still on, but the door was open, and Brennan wasn't moving. He was slumped in his chair, empty bottle of bourbon on the table, pill bottle beside it. The label said Seconal. No note, no explanation. Just a man who'd finally finished drinking himself to death. Talbot called it in, waited for the police, told them what he knew, which wasn't much. But as he waited, he noticed something. Brennan's filing cabinet was open, papers scattered on the floor. Someone had been here before him, and they'd been looking for something. The police ruled Brennan's death a suicide. Case closed in 2 days. Talbot knew better. Brennan had been scared, but he wasn't suicidal. He'd wanted to talk, wanted to confess. Someone had made sure he never got the chance. But they'd missed something. In the scattered papers, Talbot had found a photograph. It showed 3 men standing on a dock. One was Brennan in his Coast Guard uniform. One was a man Talbot didn't recognize. The third was Commander William Perry. On the back, someone had written a date, November 12, 1983, and a location, Owl's Head. Owl's Head, where the Mary Kathleen had run aground, where Corrigan's operation was based. Perry had been there, with Brennan, a month before Morin died. Talbot finally had proof that connected the commander to the smuggling operation. Now he needed to find someone who would do something with it. Talbot went to the one person he thought might still be willing to act, Janet Morin. She met him at the door with red eyes. She'd heard about Brennan.
They killed him, didn't they?
I think so.
And they'll kill you too if you keep digging.
Probably.
But I have something now.
He showed her the photograph.
Perry was part of it.
He was at Owl's Head with the smugglers a month before your brother died. This proves he wasn't just covering up. He was involved.
What are you going to do with it?
I'm going to confront him.
Make him answer for what happened.
He'll deny everything.
Maybe. But I've put everything else in writing. Every interview, every document, every connection. If something happens to me, it goes to the press.
Janet looked at the photograph for a long time.
Bobby would have wanted this. He never could let things go either.
Commander Perry lived in a colonial house in Cape Elizabeth. Security system, motion lights. The kind of precautions a guilty man takes. Talbot rang the bell at 7 a.m. Perry answered in his bathrobe, coffee in hand. His expression went from annoyed to alarmed in half a second.
Talbot, I warned you to stay away.
I know what happened to Robert Morin.
He drowned.
He was killed because he saw your operation. The dark vessels running drugs up the coast, the money funding whatever black operation the agency was running in Central America.
Perry's face went pale.
I have a photograph of you at Owl's Head.
With Brennan, with Corrigan's people. November 83.
That photograph proves nothing.
Maybe not in court.
But it proves enough for the press. And I've documented everything else. The transferred logs, the suspended investigations, the sealed indictment.
You don't know what you're dealing with.
Then tell me.
Perry stepped outside, closed the door behind him. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter. The voice of a man who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time.
The operation wasn't my idea. Orders came from above. way above. We were told to facilitate certain maritime activities, no questions asked.
Drug smuggling.
I didn't know at first. By the time I figured it out, I was already complicit.
And Morin?
Morin wouldn't stop reporting. I told Brennan to shut him down. When that didn't work, I went to the keepers myself. Morin wasn't there that day. I thought it was handled.
But he kept watching.
He went out that night, tried to get close to one of the boats. They saw him.
Who saw him?
Corrigan's people. They radioed, asked what to do.
And what did you tell them?
Perry's face crumbled.
I told them to handle it.
Talbot stood there for a long moment, processing what he'd just heard.
You ordered the murder of a lighthouse keeper to protect a drug smuggling operation.
I didn't order anything. I told them to handle the problem. I didn't know they'd...
You knew exactly what they'd do. And you let it happen.
What was I supposed to do? This came from people who could end my career, end my life. You think Brennan killed himself? He was about to talk.
Then you should be worried. Because I've already talked. Everything I know is documented. And if anything happens to me, it goes public.
Perry looked old suddenly, defeated.
It won't matter. The people behind this, they're untouchable. You can't prove anything that leads back to them.
Maybe not. But I can prove it leads to you.
Talbot turned and walked to his car. He didn't look back. 3 days later, Commander William Perry was found dead in his garage. Carbon monoxide. The official ruling was suicide. The investigation into Robert Morin's death was never reopened. Talbot's report was published 6 weeks later. A small investigative journal in Boston ran the full account. Dark vessels, drug money, a lighthouse keeper who died for seeing too much. The story got picked up by a few papers. A congressman called for hearings. The hearings never happened. Patrick Corrigan was never found. Down East Maritime Services ceased to exist. The sealed indictment remained sealed. But Janet Morin got something. Not justice, not closure, just the truth, written down where anyone could read it. She called Talbot after the article came out.
Do you think it will change anything?
No. But now they know we know. And sometimes that's enough.
Robert Morin's body was never recovered. The lighthouse at Pier 11 was automated in 1985. No keeper required. The beacon still turns. The radio equipment was replaced, and on clear nights, vessels still pass in the dark. Some of them carry running lights. Some of them don't. The coast keeps its secrets, and the men who protect those secrets sleep well, knowing that some truths are easier to bury than bodies.